Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Shouting into the Void. It's a weekly series where myself, Connor, and Liam, who's I think when this comes out on the video is this side of me, we discuss Doctor Who. Ever since the revival in 2005, which started with Chris Eccleston, we've reviewed the whole of Series 1, so you can go back and watch them if you want. Because we are coming to the end of Series 2 now. Literally 3 episodes left, including this one. Three episodes of Rose. So this is probably the second biggest change of the show coming up in a few episodes' time, which will be interesting to see how they handle it. But before we get to that, we have to go through episode 11, Fear Her. It's been a tough couple of weeks. So the last episode was Love and Monsters, which is a bad episode. This one is also a bad episode. I'm torn on whether I think it's better, worse, or the same. I think I'm probably going to make my mind up as we discuss. But as with sort of last time, we do have more negatives than positives. So what were your overall thoughts of the episode?
It could have been quite good. Execution wise, again, just like Love and Monsters, it wasn't really there. I didn't hate it. Nothing offended me, like Paving Stone stab Ursula for the most part. But I couldn't find myself really getting passionate about anything character or plot wise. It's kind of run of the mill in a way, but just not exciting run of the mill. There's some good ideas, but they're not done well, I would say. So yeah, not a favorite.
So the whole plot of this episode is the Doctor and Rose, they arrive at the future, 2012.
I can't believe it was the future when they said
which back in 2006 was 6 years away. Now it's
now 9 years ago.
Yeah, so we're now further away from 2012 than the episode was when it aired.
Oh, good.
The Doctor and Rose arrive at a cul-de-sac they arrive to go and see the Olympics. But naturally, the TARDIS just takes them where there's a problem, which turns out to be this road where kids are going missing. And it turns out there's a little girl who does some drawings, and it turns out the drawings take the children or anything. And they don't even have to be detailed drawings. They can just be tiny little figures. It takes a whole stadium, which I don't get how it works, but okay. Yeah. So effectively, the Doctor and Rose have to figure out what's going on and how to stop this alien that is inside this child. As you mentioned, that there are some good ideas, some good themes. There's one in particular I don't think is handled very well. I mean, none of them are handled very well, but there's one that I don't think is handled worse than the others, I think, just because of the subject matter.
I think we might have a similar negative then.
Yes. So if you haven't seen before, we do try and do 3 positives and 3 negatives. I know both of us struggled with the positives this week, but we didn't struggle with the negatives, so I imagine we'll get a few of them more than
I do have a few extra ones written down.
Yeah. So we'll see how it goes. But as always, we will start with our positive views. So what is your top pick for this episode?
Well, this is a very similar positive to what I did with Idiot's Lantern, which again, not a fantastic episode, but I really like the Doctor and Rose's dynamic and their bond. So I've gone with that again this time around, because once again, they're kind of a detective duo for a lot of the episodes. And I think that's often like the best Ten and Rose dynamic, I think, is them just investigating, having a bit of fun. You can tell, how well they get along, how well they know each other at this point. The chemistry, obviously, with David and Billy is really, really good. And I think even when the scenes carry a lot of like exposition, blah, 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 I think, David and Billy, probably more so than the Doctor and Rose, really get that across in as an interesting way as they can. They certainly carry, I think, some of the slower portions of the episode. I like them working a few things out And I think while I don't particularly like Rose blaming a child for being lonely and not really getting to grips with what the Isolus is struggling with, and it didn't ask to be removed from its family. That was a bit weird. I did like her then kind of being forced to work it out on her. Well, I say work it out on their own. Literally, everyone told her what to do at the end. But she still had to kind of go through things on her own and just really trying their best to be like, isn't Rose great? Just before the last two-parter. But when, you know, Ten and Rose are bouncing off each other, it really works well. And I think those are probably the most enjoyable aspects of the episode for me.
Yeah, my top positive is also the Doctor and Rose team. I was going to put just the Doctor because I think you can when he's not there, Rose struggles by herself, I think, as a character. But I think that David Tennant shines, especially with Billie Piper next to him. There's just a number of things that happens in this that David Tennant does great. The fingers on lips line, you know, when he shuts up the whole group, I'm like, this is great. I love it. Christopher Eccleston couldn't have pulled that off. It wouldn't have had the same effect, I don't think. And then there's one scene where they walk into the kitchen and he just starts eating the marmalade out of the jar. And Rose is like, don't do that. I was like, oh, okay.
I must say that does feel weird to me. That doesn't feel very 10th Doctor to me.
I don't know. For me, that feels more like it because obviously you get more of that quirkiness, I think, series 3, series 4 than you do in this series. I think an example is obviously the when he gets poisoned in the Unicorn and the Wasp.
Yeah, that works better for me because that is a silly episode and they commit to the camp. It just felt weird for me in this one instance.
Yeah, that's fair enough. But I think that he injected the light-hearted bits into this episode, I think.
He does make it fun, yeah.
Which is, again, some of the subject matter in this, I think, was handled poorly, which we'll come on to. But I just think seeing them as this team, it sort of started knowing this could be a book, a comic, or a Big Finish production because it's so maybe it's a negative, but it's it's so standard Doctor Who that it could be on any format and you would recognize it as Doctor Who.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
I guess it depends how you look at Doctor Who. Will depend if you take that as a positive or a negative. But you really do see how they've come along as a Doctor and companion in this, and it does do a lot. I think coming just before the series finale because you can see how well they get on and how well they help each other out and how they interact, and then
nothing will ever split us apart.
Yeah, and she's like, no, don't say never. Oh, but nothing's gonna happen. What are you on about? Yeah, we'll come on to that as well.
Yeah, we will. Oh, we will.
But yeah, I do think that they've shown it in a couple of the episodes, as you mentioned, Idiot's Lantern being one of them. I think their presence in this episode is what Love and Monsters might be missing.
Yeah.
But obviously that was going to be a casualty either way because of this whole scheduler thing, and they fix it eventually.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's my first positive. So what is your second?
I was trying to be kind, and I've just put the general concept and the ideas.
Right.
I think living drawings. I think there's a lot of potential there to do something quite cool. Again, maybe squandered a bit by just how the episode played out.
Yeah.
I really like the idea of the Isolus and the fact it's like got billions and billions of brothers and sisters, and one gets separated, like it's drawn to like a lonely child. I think that's quite cool. And it's nice that they're not just, oh, I'm evil, I'm gonna make the world vanish because I'm evil. There's like, I like the idea of like the loneliness there and everything, and some of the subject matters, it's cool to address them, but yeah. So there were some good ideas on paper. They just then continued writing on the paper and it didn't really work out, I would say. But I think there's stuff that I'm like, oh yeah, that's an interesting thing. This is not like the long game. I'm just like, this is all boring. I don't like this. Yeah. This is stuff we've seen before. This is kind of inventive and I liked that.
Yeah, and I think that's a similar thing to last week again, is that there's good ideas in this. It's just, it doesn't have that thing in it that makes it good. It's not the best. If it wasn't a child, if it was just, if it wasn't 2012 as well, if it was something else, I think the fact that it's set on Earth so close to present day, like just being set around the Olympics isn't enough to give this a "oh, it's great" type thing.
Yeah.
But I do get what you mean. But speaking of, I guess not speaking of general concepts, but thinking of things that are great in this episode, it's Kel, the council man.
That's my third positive.
Like I just forgot how funny he is. He's like the most realistic person. Like he's just involved in his job. He doesn't care about anything else, just his job. He's like, I want to go home. I'm doing this, and that's it. And then he's so protective over his equipment, and he's just, he's compared to everybody else in this episode, other than Dr. Rose. All the other like characters are very serious, sort of boring characters, but this is the only one that you'll remember from this episode, even you taking the mum and Chloe into consideration. Other than the Doctor and Rose, the only one you'll think is, oh yeah, that council man. He was pretty funny. He's the only one you'll remember.
You to the council.
Yeah, and it helps that he's got a very obvious accent, and it helps that he's got that catchphrase, I guess, if you'd call it. But he's just one of those characters that pops up every now and then in Doctor Who, where you're like, this is realist. This is like a realistic man that that you think you'd expect to find on the street. So why was he in your positives?
It was just nice in a kind of maybe Dallas Dishwater story at times with Dallas Dishwater characters. It was nice to have a fun, light-hearted character. I also feel like, much like the Doctor and Rose, he made exposition sound somewhat interesting when he was like talking. I mean, like the whole thing with the cars, like did they ever explain like why the cars broke down?
I guess maybe it was because like cars give off heat, and so therefore the pod was taking the heat, and therefore it killed the car. Maybe.
Sure, they never explicitly said, but it's fine. But he got that across fairly well, and talking about disappearances, stuff like that. So that was good. And I just thought the actor brought a lot of energy to scenes. Like some scenes would have just fallen flat on their face if Kel hadn't been in them, just to lift up the spirits a bit. I mean, I'm not kind of trying to dig at every single actor in this who just had a pretty performance in character. It was just that they weren't maybe written to be the most interesting characters, but at least Kel had some sort of personality, and the actor I think did a great job of kind of bringing that to life. The fact that he's been memed even like 16 years later, whatever, also does help, granted. But he is one of the more memorable side characters in the story, probably more so than Chloe and Trish, let's be frank. And yeah, he's just a nice, fun addition. But he does have some more serious moments, like when he's comforting Rose, being like, "Oh, the doctor's, he's probably just popped off somewhere." So there's a bit of heart to him as well. So it's not just like he's a funny comedy character, because there is more to him. So I really liked his inclusion.
Yeah, he's great. I want Cal to come back. He can be the next companion.
Yeah.
My last positive is very, very scraping the barrel. It's the Next Time trailer. So obviously next time is the finale. So naturally, and to be fair, when it gets to this point in the series, I'll always be like, oh, the Next Time trailer is going to show us the finale, which is obviously normally like a super high budget extravaganza. So I'm like, that's going to be the best episode of the series. And it always when you were younger, the finale was always the best episode of the series.
Yeah.
And this trailer does everything to raise the hype after two pretty crap episodes. It does. You're like, oh, the Sidemen are back. Who are those ghosts? What's going on? It really adds to the hype, and it builds, and just another week, and then we're finally there. And I think that Doctor Who did that very well when they first came back. Thinking back to the series 1 finale where they did like a little teaser each day, that kind of thing, and it just makes you feel very excited. And it's just a welcome addition to the episode that you might be thinking, oh, that was all right, and then seeing the trailer, you're like, oh my god, but next week's going to be great.
Yeah.
But like I said, it's scraping the barrel because it's not really the episode; it's just the bit on the end.
Yeah, I mean, I have some choice words to say about how the episode ends off, but I do like the musical transition into the Next Time trailer. It's not like the logo across the screen. It's a bit more like, that's very well done. Like, set the mood.
Definitely. So that was record time, I think, for our positives. So now we are into the negatives.
Yes.
So yeah, this could go on for a while. So if you want to pause here, get a drink, get some snacks, we'll wait. We'll yeah. All right, cool. You done? Let's go. What's your first negative?
The kind of I'm a very mixed bag on the resolution and the ending of the episode.
Yeah.
Now, I will go on record and say I don't mind love wins the day resolutions. I just think they get overused a lot. That's the problem with them more than anything.
Yeah.
So I don't mind that. I could have done without Rose going, feel the love, because that was cheesy as fuck. Didn't need that, just throw the bloody thing.
Yep.
It was just the way they forced that ending with like, oh, but it needs more than heat, Doctor. And then right on cue, that perfect commentator's like, I'm going to save the day here. Oh, this is like a beacon of hope and a beacon of love. He might as well just stare into the camera and say, love,
This
Rose,
is it.
love.
This is how you do it.
Like, oh, well, now we know why it's was set during the Olympics, because the Olympic torch means love, apparently. It's just that was very forced, the dialogue to get to that conclusion. Again, just forcing Rose to work things out. Yep. The same with the Doctor being able to draw the Olympic torch. I was like, what's that about?
And then how come the torch then doesn't get got from the man that's holding it if it's been drawn?
Yeah, like that felt bizarre to me as well. But again, the ending just needed to happen. Yep. So again, I don't mind that like love wins, especially with the isolas and the concept of it. You know, that's kind of a pretty big deal, and like the themes of family and stuff. I get love kind of being the thing that wins the day there, but they just set it up in such a forced way with the dialogue and stuff, and there was a bit of cheese. And then the last bit with there's a storm approaching. Like, there's fireworks going. There's no storm. Like, at least put some clouds behind. But it's just so like, Billy Piper's leaving. Something's going to happen.
Yep.
You just don't need it, because it's just such like the whole ending's like, oh, celebration and fireworks, the Olympics, love, lights, everything's happy and cheery, and cake and the little ball things that tends
and ball bearings.
Yeah, and everything's all happy, and then just suddenly it's just such a jarring tonal shift right at the end. I'm like, you did not need this, especially with the way they frame the next time trailer and the fact that those episodes happen and they're sad. You don't need to foreshadow them. It opens with, this is the story of how I died. We're going to get to that gloomy bit before the titles anyway. It felt very, very strange.
Yeah, my negative is the whole climax, just because it's not. So I did put tacky foreshadowing because it was very on the nose, completely down to, oh, nothing's gonna break us up, that kind of thing. It's like, come on, how obvious do you want to be?
And it's just the fact like they fought the devil.
Yeah.
And Rose was like, oh, it says I'm going to die in battle. But she wasn't like, you know what? They keep throwing stuff at us, the fucking devil, but they never ever will. But when there's a little flower alien thing, and that's what, they keep trying to split us up. Like, I mean, come on.
And then they use the Beast's dialogue in the next time trailer as well.
They do, didn't they? Just in case you didn't know.
Yeah, just in case you forgot.
Rose was leaving,
yeah. But yeah, so that was tacky to start with. Also, right, it pisses me off to no end that everyone's come back from the drawing, and rather than go and check that Rose is okay, they're also like, I guess I better follow the Olympic torch just in case the man falls over. I was like,
because they got struck by lightning earlier. And they just casually mentioned that.
It's like, okay, so then 20 minutes later, he finally goes, oh. And then
you can't just say he's like exhausted from the heat or something and just pass that. Don't say, I got struck by lightning earlier, so now he collapses.
Even then, like, why would they just allow a random man to walk up, take the torch, and then go into the stadium, up the stairs, and light it?
No one seems to be stopping him. Why though?
So that doesn't make any sense. I'm like, surely you've got bigger problems. You don't need to do that. Rose throwing the thing at the torch, I get it, but first of all, the way she throws it, straight up, that's not going to it, that's going straight up. I was like, for God's sake, just show her properly throwing it, not whatever this is. And then it's terrible CGI to see it, like, because obviously, I guess is the spaceship sentient? Is it? It must be, surely.
I feel like it must be, yeah.
Because it goes down, but then it levels out so that it chases after the thing. I'm like, well, surely it must have just.
Yeah, I think it senses it.
that's fine, but it's bullshit that she can just throw it. And then my other favorite thing is like she's trying to get to the torch, and the policeman's like, "Oh no, you can't do it." And then she's going, "Oh, but I can stop this." I'm like, "So you're just telling him you're going to stop the Olympics? He doesn't know what you're on about. Like, what are you
Take
on
you
about?"
away.
Yeah,
This is the story of how I was imprisoned.
I'm like, surely that's some kind of terrorist threat. I can stop this. Hold on a minute. So that's a poor choice of words. And then this is tying to my next negative. Obviously, the dad from the wardrobe comes alive. First of all, he has magical powers, which means he can just lock a door.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, that was weird.
And not let him out. Secondly, he gets stopped by song.
Yeah.
How does that work? Because in theory, this is an actual man that's now come back out, not like a weird drawing picture. It's a man, because that's what they said. You know, everything that was drawn comes back.
Yeah.
So that's a weird thing in itself. Like how can they stop a man with the like? I don't get how the drawing works. I don't get it.
It felt like oh, well, that's a nice solution. Everything's good. Oh shit, that's 38 minutes long. We need an extra couple of minutes. Oh, let's have the dad picture come alive again. And for some
not
reason,
cast anyone. Let's just keep it a shadowy figure that's coming.
Yeah, strange.
Yeah, so I think that handily, coincidentally leads into my next negative, which is the subplot of the abusive dead dad. I assume he's dead.
He died in a car crash, they said.
Right, so this is the kind of thing which you can have in this show, and you can talk about it, and you can have whatever, you know, it can be done well. This one, it's just like every time it comes up, it's like brushed off, and nobody sort of mentions it more.
Yeah,
and it's like, and I get like some people will want to just ignore that kind of thing if it's in their life, which is fair enough. But it just like even the Doctor and Rose just sort of gloss over it, and they don't think, oh, well, hang on a minute, you know, whatever. Secondly, if it's just a drawing, why can't they just rub out the drawing on the wardrobe? Why can this drawing specifically talk? Is it because like, well, that comes back to the whole how the hell do these drawings work in the first place? But does it feed off the fear? Is that the kind of thing? You know, is it the scared? The more scared?
Yeah.
Chloe is that more powerful for the dad? I guess that's why when she calms down, it stops getting angry. I don't know. But it just feels a bit brushed off, and then it just feels like they've used this dramatic issue, you know, this quite tough subject matter as just it's a little scary villain coming down the stairs. I'm like, that would be horrifying if that was real for someone.
If you sing, all your problems will go away, and that's just that trauma solved forever.
And you can just deal with it. Just sing and push through it. It's fine. It just feels like it cheapens it, I think. Like this whole episode, especially the end, cheapens. Like it's fine saying, oh, he's terrible in her dreams and she's not really gotten over it and blah blah blah. That's fine. You can do some interesting stuff with that, but having it come alive kind of just, I think, cheapens it quite a lot. Which is a shame. But there's just issues all across the board with this episode. So what is your next negative?
Mine was also the abusive dad subplot. I think it's very glossed over. I actually think it's one of the more interesting things that they could have done with an episode. But it's just completely glossed over. It just feels so tacked on at the end when everything seems to be fixed. And then, but all the drawings come alive for some reason. And then that all happens. And, you know, I get, you know, they set it up like when she dreams about her dad and she's in panic and stuff, Trish sings that song to her. So singing that defeats it. I can understand the logic. I'm still not sure if it really should work. But yeah, it was a very messily handled plot. Kudos to trying to tackle that issue, but strange. And one thing I will note, this is in my research for fun facts and stuff. Matthew Graham, who wrote this, defended this whole thing. And he defended the episode because he found out like some of the older fans, you know, weren't big fans of it, and the fandom considers it quite bad. He was like, well, that doesn't really matter because it was written to be child friendly, and Rusty Davies told me to write this for my son, so I wrote like a light-hearted episode because the finale is going to be quite dark, so I wanted to do something a bit more light-hearted and fun. And that's absolutely fine. I think that makes sense.
Yeah.
But you say, oh, I'm going to make this child friendly. And your first thought is, oh, an abusive father subplot.
Yeah. For my son, I'm going to make an abusive father subplot.
It's like, we're going to make a light-hearted episode and you include an abusive father.
Yep.
That's traumatizing a girl. And you don't even make that the big deal. The bigger deal is she's drawing people, not, she's lonely and she's been abused by her father. And it's been a year of hell, even when he's gone, nightmares and stuff.
Yep.
That's not particular. That doesn't scream child-friendly and light-hearted to me, Matthew. I'm just going to say that. So I get it, but the fact that you want to defend it by saying, well, it's a child-friendly episode, so it's fine if the kids like it, because that's who I wrote it for, the target audience, not maybe some of the older fans.
Yeah.
But it's not child-friendly to have an abusive stepdad subplot, and then it's a messily handled one at best. So yeah, I wasn't a big fan of how they handled that.
Yeah, because I think there are even examples in the show of how you can handle childhood trauma better. I think Night Terrors is probably a better example of how you can do that.
Yeah.
Because obviously that's a child that has quite a lot of issues and that's handled quite well. Ish. It's better than this, definitely. But even like, is it Listen with Pete Capaldi and the whole nightmare thing? That does it pretty well as well.
Yeah.
It just feels tacked on, glossed over, and cheap, I think. So my next negative, this is more of a light-hearted one. The mum. Oh boy.
Trish.
I don't know. Does she not like her daughter? Is that the situation? So the two big issues, and I point this out to you. One is the stop her drawing. It's like, oh, I've taken her pencil. She can't draw anyone. This is when the doctor's been taken by the drawing. I've taken all the pencils. She can't be drawing. They walk in. She's got a pencil and she's drawing. I'm like, how does that work? Like, your child can draw things that will then transport into these pictures, and you just A, left her alone, and B, not triple checked for pencils.
Yeah.
That's a pain. And then even worse is when Rose has to go and do something. I think that was when she was throwing the thing. And she's like, oh, make sure, keep your eye on her. Don't let her leave your sight or something. She comes back and the mum's just downstairs having a drink.
You just there, mum was just like, isn't life nice?
Yeah, I was like, what are you doing? Again, the situation, what's going on. I guess maybe this could play into the whole abusive dad thing where
I think that's a big part of it. That's why she's like
trying
afraid
to
and stuff.
Avoid, ignore thing, whatever. But if you just do as you're told. You've said this could literally kill the world. It's a lot bigger than just the two of you. Just sit and watch it. Just sit and watch your child and make sure nothing happens. If you're going to get a drink, take her with you, or just wait until someone comes back.
Yeah. So I understand like she had quite an abusive relationship as well. She said Chloe got the worst of it, but it doesn't, negate her experience and stuff. But they then just make her stupid for plot's sake. And she's just downstairs drinking some orange juice so Chloe can start drawing the earth, and they have to hammer down the door and stuff.
Yeah. And like,
it's just ugh.
Yeah, I get like trying to ignore what's going on at the start because you don't want to believe that it's real. You can't process what's going on. I get all that. But once it's all in front of you, you need to there's just no excuse. I don't think that shouldn't be in her character to do that. I don't think, especially if the only person she's got left is her daughter, who she cares so much about. It's just, I just can't. Like I said, some of the characters in this are just bland and useless. And the mum, I think, is more on the useless side than bland, maybe. But I wouldn't necessarily say she has the most character either.
No.
So what is your next negative?
I saw those motivations being very flimsy, and I don't think they define a lot of like how it works particularly well. In terms of like the powers and stuff, when it like leaves and everything gets resolved, you feel like she loves Chloe Webber, like as they say. You think you love her enough to make sure that you get rid of the dad because you can control when things come to life and when don't like you. You think, well, she doesn't like that. Let's probably get rid of that now. She's back to normal.
Yeah,
that felt strange. But then when Rose comes to it, she's like, "Oh, I found your ship," and it just needs some
Okay,
heat.
bye.
We can work something out with it. She's like, no, I love Chloe Webber. I'm going to stay with Chloe Webber. I will like let the dad out of the cupboard if you try and separate me from Chloe Webber. As soon as Rose fixes that, she's like, bye, Chloe Webber.
I love you.
Whee! Off she
Bye.
goes. I'm like, so what gives? Like, if you were just going to do that anyway, why wouldn't you just help Rose out and be like, well, if there's a chance that you can get my shit back, I'll help you out and I'll stop joining the Earth. But they just need the threat to continue because apparently she loves and bonds with Chloe. But drop of a hat, she just leaves her behind again. It felt very strange. And again, it was just flimsy because plot needed to happen and threats need to be a thing that they resolve. So a lot of that was a bit,
Yeah, it felt like they needed a villain, but they also wanted to make the alien like, they wanted the audience to empathize with it and sort of understand where it's coming from. But it very much felt like, and I get where Rose was coming from, where she was like, oh, it sounds like it's having a tantrum, like the alien, because that's effectively what it was. It wasn't getting its own way.
Yeah.
It wasn't getting its own way, and therefore it was being a pain with Chloe. But then as soon as it does get its own way, it's like, okay, I don't need you now. I'm going to piss off. But it's not framed like that. It's framed as it's supposed to be this friendship that they both enjoy.
Yeah.
Or at least they both get out of. And that they're inseparable, where clearly they're not. And it was just the alien using it as a vessel to get what it wanted.
Yeah, she's all like, I'll never be alone again. And
Yeah.
then, bye, you're going to be alone now, bye.
Yeah. You're going to be alone. I'm not going to be alone. You're going to be alone.
Yeah.
I definitely agree. And then, the powers, I think they do try and explain it with some scientific words. But I just don't get how it can take living people into a drawing.
And like, if the doctor says like it can create and take things out of pictures and put them in pictures and stuff, why don't you just create yourself some friends then instead of sucking kids into drawings?
Yeah. And then there's the
if
whole...
that clearly wasn't working, try something else.
And then there's a whole like, I would have liked the drawing aspect to be explored a bit more. Like, what happens if a drawing is destroyed? What happens if it gets damaged?
Oh man.
Well, that's it. That's
the kind of some coffee on poor like Sid or something.
Yeah, well, yeah, exactly. So do they come back with coffee on there? Like a coffee ring? How does that work? I would have liked more, I think, on this. I think there was too much time spent on the Olympic side of things, which comes on to my next negative, which is the Olympics. Yeah, it feels like the Olympics were definitely shoehorned into this episode, I think. There wasn't really a reason for it to be there, because the first thing you think of, I need a beacon for hope and love. I know, the Olympic torch. That I don't think that's the first thing you think of. But I think around the time this episode was made, the UK was bidding or had won the bid to host the Olympics.
Yeah.
So I think there was a little bit of, hey, we need to promote this that's coming up on the BBC in 6 years' time. But there's a lot of people just standing and watching the Olympics, or at least the build up to the Olympics. Obviously, a lot of it's focused around the torchbearer, and the end state, like the stadium is shit. It's not a good looking stadium. It's tiny. I can never tell if that's supposed to be a swimming pool in the middle, because it looks like it. And especially looking at it now in 2021 and knowing what the 2012 Olympics was actually and how well the opening ceremony went and all that kind of stuff, it just hasn't aged well either, I don't think.
No. And she mentioned earlier as well, like when she draws the stadium, it's just like circles and blank faces and stuff. I'm like, that still works. And
well, that's it. Like how detailed do these drawings have to be? Do you have to see? Obviously, you don't have to see their face. So how does it work? Is it just a case of I'm going to take you don't need to really see them? I don't get how that works. And sticking on the Olympics and taking people, there is one great line where they're showing all the people in the stadium gone, and the commentator's like, "Oh, everyone's gone. We're going to Bob in the ship." Not you too, Bob.
Like she specifically drew the box as well.
I know. There was that, and then there was a bit where it was like, all these people have gone, and yet they've just cut back to the torch, making it. I'm like, I'm sorry, like however many people have just vanished from thin air, and you've cut straight back into the Olympic torch race. What are you doing? That's not how a news cycle works. Everyone would be like that would be on your show for hours. You wouldn't cut away from that.
Yeah.
So that kind of annoyed me. So I just think the setting, and it's always going to be an issue when you go slightly into the future.
Yeah.
It's an infamous issue with Disneyland and it's Tomorrowland because it's supposed to be the future, but you eventually, when you get to the future and everything's not the same, it doesn't look good, which is I think what this episode suffers with.
It's like they can do it well, like Dalek is set in 2012, but obviously that's an underground museum, so they can kind of
they don't link that to an event. It would be like us saying we're going to set an episode at next year's 2022 Qatar World Cup. And then, there's no way you can predict that and predict what it's going to look like. It's just not good. That's why historicals are normally better. But far future ones, great. You can't really do any damage. I doubt Doctor Who's going to last until the year 2 billion Apple dash whatever. It might, but I doubt it.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I guess that's my next one. So have you got any other negatives?
I just like they wrote Trish to be stupid for plot's sake. I don't know how I feel about the scribble monster. I feel like it's pretty fucking stupid.
Well, then that's the other thing. Like, if the drawing, like, that sets up as if things that aren't real that get drawn get spat into the real world, and things that are real that get drawn get taken. So then why isn't the dad straight away put in? It just don't, like, I just don't get it.
Yeah.
So has it scribbled over something and then I don't know how it works. I don't get it.
Is it birthed from anger or something? Because the pencil snaps and she's like, no, and then just scribbles it, and then it just so happens to turn up in the garage where Rose is walking past.
And she thinks the cat got in there, even though that was like 10 minutes ago, and the cat's definitely not in there. Rose, you saw it go into a box and vanish. It's not going to be in the garage.
As far as threats go, I don't think it's up there. It's not like the Ood or anything calling in the vents, Like, it's a scribble.
Yeah, and the CGI is not great on it either. It's very poorly animated. Even when the Doctor like rubs a little bit off, that's still pretty dodgy as well.
It doesn't even like the rubber's not even on the thing yet; it vanishes, and then it cuts to him holding it again. And it's still just fully there as a ball. Like,
I know. And then speaking of CGI, not even CGI, but like when she's drawing, it's all like sped up and her hands like going like this or whatever. I'm like, oh, don't do that. That doesn't look good. Yeah, I don't think her drawings are that good in the of all your issues, you're drawing shit.
The drawings suck.
And I don't want to go on too badly, but the child actor's not the best either, which has been a running theme, I think, for this series. Which is fair enough. It's a child. You can't expect Oscar-worthy performances from a child.
But then you write an episode around one, and it's like,
kind
of set yourself up for failure.
And part of me kind of thinks that maybe it's part of the aliens waves. Maybe that's she only speaks like that and acts like that because she's possessed by this alien.
Yeah, I think she's also limited to just like when she has to whisper as the aliens don't make it a distinct voice. You can't really get much emotion from it when you're whispering because you can't put as much inflections and stuff on it.
Yeah, so I think it's a bit harsh going in on the child acting, but it wasn't great. No. What else was there that I put in on my notes? I'm not a big fan of the song that they sing, just because
Kookaburra sits in the old gum tree.
I just don't like it.
They 0 out of 10. Don't like Kookaburra sits in the old gum tree.
Didn't like the song. 0 out of 10. I want to do a special shout out to the security guard from Primeval who's in this episode.
Yeah.
So for those of you that don't know, Primeval was a ITV show set around these anomalies opening up in the world that produced dinosaurs. In series 2, there's a mall security guard that gets eaten by a velociraptor, but it turns out he's like a clone, and there's like loads of him. And so now anytime he's in any show, I'm like, hey, it's the security guard from Primeval. Which is probably harsh because this episode I think came out before he was in Primeval. So really it's the guy from Fear Her.
Yeah, that's true. I think that started before Primeval.
I just wanted to to point him out. I don't appreciate the old lady that's on the street that apparently knows what's going on. I was like, yeah, I get it. You can be like, something's wrong, and you can be overly paranoid, but she seems to like know what's going on, like as if she's seen it. And I'm like, so why haven't you caught? Surely you could do something other than sending vague threats to the children on the road. She's only in like the start, and then she appears at the end and be like, oh, thank you, and that's it. I'm like, what's the point in that?
Look around.
Yeah, literally. Everyone in the street is terrible.
Yeah. Feeling guilty, are we?
Yeah, the racist.
I was like, that's just something they'd say in Miranda. Like,
yeah,
this is a W.
The slightly racist neighbor there. It's all your fault. I'm like, okay. Yeah, but I did like David Tennant in that scene where he makes everybody shut up.
Yeah, that is good.
Like,
and when he like stares at Rose like, you need to do it too.
Yeah,
You're gonna make me look ridiculous, Rose.
One thing I like is when they're walking through the street and Rose is like, aren't you gorgeous? And it's like,
yeah.
What was it like? And you see just the cat. Like,
I've been experimenting with backcombing.
Yeah, like I said, there's a lot of funny moments I think in this.
That's a good call back to New Earth as well. Like he's gone off cats because of New Earth. That was good.
Yeah, which I loved. CGI being terrible. Yeah.
Why is there just a cardboard box on the grass for the cat to walk into?
Yeah, just easy prop that. Well, what we got lying around. Oh, I've got the box. Put it in. Also, when Chloe like follows the Doctor to the TARDIS.
Yeah.
So she like sneaks out like 10 minutes after they've gone, but then she's like right outside the TARDIS as soon as they get there. I'm like, I'm sorry. Did she just like take a shortcut? Were they just taking their time to get there? That's ridiculous. Yeah. Mum did a shit job of taking the pencils. I honestly, when Rose came into the room and was like bringing back, I honestly thought she was just about to hit that child and be like, you've just like kick her across the room. I was like, but she didn't. She resisted. Yeah, not you too, Bob. Ridiculous. Yeah, and then like, why get rid of the Doctor if he's just going to point you to what you have to do anyway? Withdrawing the Olympic torch. But there's no need to get rid of him if he's just going to be like, hey, this is how you do it.
Yeah.
It just doesn't make sense. And yeah, I put the alien just fucks over Chloe when he pisses off. Like, bye, see you later. Oh. Yeah, and then the tacky foreshadowing. Just. Have you got any other points? Was there anything else?
I don't think so. And like, this is all coming. Obviously, they didn't have long to write the episode and stuff like that. Granted, it did need a few more rewrites, and then maybe it could have been something. But at the end of the day, this is how it ended up. So we have to critique that. So maybe we're being very, very harsh. At the end of the day, production schedules, maybe sort it out better.
Yeah, we only critique what's in front of us, and what was in front of us was shit. So
thanks for watching.
So that's it. So on a more lighter note,
imagine if we don't like Army of Ghosts and Doomsday now.
I know. I mean, that could be the case, but
I mean, to be fair, like with Thermal Monsters and Fear Her, Army of Ghosts could still be like a 5 out of 10. I'm going to be like, this is the best episode of all time.
I do think the finale is probably, out of the first 4 series, it's probably the lowest of the 4. But I just think that's more because the other finales are stronger rather than this one being weak. Yeah. But we can cross that bridge when we come to it. So what are your fun facts for this episode then?
Okay. They're fun. Right. So are you ready to hear the worst working titles of all time?
Yes.
I think you are. The working titles for this episode, and to be fair, I like Fear Here as a title. I think that's cool. Much better than these. So they had 2 that we're working with. The first one was Chloe Webber Destroys the Earth.
Oh my Christ. Right.
And then, are you ready for this one? This literally could have been what they called it. You're a bad girl, Chloe Webber. No! That could have been what this episode was called. Oh. You're a bad girl, Chloe Webber. They were determined to get Chloe Webber in there, but really? I think Fear is a much better title. Yeah.
BBC put their foot down, like, we're not having that name.
Yeah, whoever came up with the idea for Fear Her, thank you. That's probably the best thing about the episode is it's got a cool title.
Yeah.
So yes. This is like a production thing as well. This episode was originally lined up to be in series 3, but it was hastily moved up when a script from Stephen Fry fell through. So that's why they didn't have much time to write it and get it all sorted, and why it ended up being a bit shit. So yeah, it would have been interesting to see that with the Doctor and Martha in Fear Her.
Yeah, I don't know how different. Surely the plot wouldn't have been too much different from what it was. I mean, maybe with a whole year to work on it, it could have been massively different.
Yeah, there'd have been a lot of rewrites and stuff. Yeah, well, I guess we'll never know.
Well, we might when we get a Target novelized. No, we won't. This will be one of the last ones to get one as well.
Yeah. This is the first episode since the Doctor dances where no one dies. Hooray! I guess.
Yeah.
It is true. Can confirm. This is my favorite fun fact this week, I think. In 2009, Doctor Who magazine conducted a reader poll to rank the first 200 Doctor Who stories, because Planet of the Dead was the 200th Doctor Who story. Right. So they did a poll. Fear Her ranked 192nd of 200, which is the lowest ranked story of the revived series at the time in that list. And then they did another poll in 2014, ranking stories from 50 years of Doctor Who. Fear Her was still the lowest rated from the revival. However, it did even worse and was placed 240th of 241.
Fucking hell.
So people like all the shit classic stories, even those are actually better. Now we've changed our minds. So
yeah, I think
not well regarded, this one.
On IMDb as well, this was the lowest rated New Who episode until Jodie Whittaker's first series, I think.
Right.
But I don't necessarily. I think Jodie Whittaker's episodes are better than this one.
Yeah,
by far.
I would agree.
But nobody's going back and re-reviewing Fear Her in the context of what we've had now. So it's going to stick it. Whatever.
Yeah. It's David Tennant good, Jodie Whittaker bad. So they're just going to bomb all of these episodes.
Basically.
Really.
Chibnall Bad is the
is
the franchise name.
It's so cool. So yes, there's that. Ironically enough, Matt Smith ended up carrying the 2012 Olympic torch in Wales. So that could have been.
I
very
do
funny.
remember
there was a whole petition to get David Tennant to do it, and he was up for it, but it didn't work out in the end.
No.
But it is funny that a doctor still ended up doing that. And then, funnily enough, they have Hugh Edwards doing the commentary in this of the Olympic ceremony, and he actually,
Bob.
and he actually did end up doing it in real life. So that's fun. So that part's aged very well.
Yeah.
So there you go. That's one good thing. And then Matthew Graham pitched the story for this episode as about a man who could drain the earth of its beauty. But Rusty Davies preferred Fear Her's idea that we went with. Abusive Dad, killer drawings. So maybe one day we'll get a story about draining the earth of its beauty. Maybe there's something there. And then they actually wanted Dame Kelly Holmes to be the torchbearer in this episode, which is why they named the street Dame Kelly Holmes Close or whatever. But she was doing Dancing on Ice, so she couldn't do it. ITV, they strike again.
She dodged a bullet with that one, though. So
yeah. And then finally, David Tennant, Rusty Davies, and Euros Lynn, who directed the episode, have all been on record to say this episode could have been a lot better. But it was hurt by a lack of budget and rushed writing and filming schedules. Yeah, so, at least they're open and honest about the fact that it's not the best.
You can see the lack of budget in the fact that they used the cardboard box when the cat...
make the cat disappear, walks into a cardboard box, it's just there.
But at least we can stop talking about this episode soon. So, what are you rating it out of 10?
Okay. I'm going to give it a 4.5.
Okay.
So it's a smidge better than the Monsters for me, just because I have a lot of problems with the story, but the Doctor and Rose are in it a lot, and they're fun. This has Kel. And I think in terms of stories, this does, and tone and stuff, this is a bit more cohesive than other Monsters was. That was a bit all over the place. So not by much, granted, but I do prefer this one.
I'm going the other way. I'm giving it a 3.5.
Oh, wow.
So it's slightly worse.
I think that's the lowest score any of us have given ever. Yeah. It is, because it was long game. We both gave it a 4, just like Love and Monsters last week.
I mean, I think what tips it for me is like if I have to choose between these two episodes to rewatch, which one am I watching? If I'm forced to watch one. I'm watching the one with the memes. I'm not watching this one again. I would rather watch this. I'd rather watch Love and Monsters. It's a drinking game than this one. In whatever scenario, I'd rather watch last week's than this one.
Yeah.
Even if there are some more positives in this one, including the Doctor and Rose, I think it just overall, it's just not, ironically, not a fun episode, even though the writer meant for it to be lighthearted. I just don't think it's and I think time has helped Love and Monsters be a fun episode with the memes
Yeah,
and everything.
definitely.
But
yeah.
then it's also a sign for Fear Her if it's not had as many memes as Love and Monsters has.
Yeah.
So I think for me, it's going to have to be a 3.5. And
So,
I'm
yeah,
so
there you
glad
go.
I'm not going to have to rewatch it again.
Yeah, probably
Now that
never
we've
watch
done
this
it.
again for the rest of my life.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I so
So that is
avoid it.
so then, folk, that is the lowest scoring episode so far. Then, since you
I'll
got,
be. I think
I
I'll
would say
be. I'll be
maybe it balances
shocked.
out. I don't know.
Maybe
It's going to be low.
Yeah.
It's
Well,
low.
I mean, our average for this now for both of us will be 4. Wouldn't
It's certainly got the lowest single score from one of us so far.
Yeah. I don't think we're going to hit this low again. At least not
Ever.
yeah, probably not until maybe Peter Capaldi, but even then, that's a big maybe.
Yeah.
I'm not a big fan of Kill the Moon. You're not a big fan of
In the Forest of the Night.
In the Forest of the Night.
I find that really boring. But I wouldn't say it's 3.5 boring because Peter Capaldi is hilarious with this.
Well, that's it. So it'll come like that might come down with would I rather watch this or Love and Monsters?
Yeah.
So we might be talking about this episode in a year's time when eventually we get to them. But yeah, so I'm sorry, Fear Her. I didn't fear you, so 3.5.
I feared watching you, but that was about it.
I did. I was like, just every time I thought about watching this episode, I was like, I don't want to watch it. I just don't want to watch it. So I'm so happy we're coming on to next week, which is Army of Ghosts, which is the first half of the finale.
Mm-hmm.
Madness. We will have almost watched 2 whole series of Doctor Who.
My goodness.
And then so next week is the first half, so it's all pretty much all set up.
Yeah.
I think the Doctor and Rose arrive back on Earth, present day, even if it's 2007 because it's a year out. And yeah, there's ghosts around. Oh, what's going on? They have to figure out what's going on, basically. How does the mysterious Torchwood link into all this as well? Which I don't know if you noticed, but there was references throughout the whole series.
Yeah, and I wonder who the villains are going to be. Interesting.
So they're Cybermen, but how are they linked? We don't know how they're linked to the ghosts. You know, in the next time does give away the Cybermen. It kind of gives away the Daleks as well.
Yeah.
If you know your laser.
If you know your sound effects and visual effects.
It doesn't show them, so it kind of leaves a bit of maybe it is. Maybe it's just the same reused effect.
Which is smart, because then that would take away from the cliffhanger.
Yeah. So what can you remember from this episode? How do you remember enjoying it if you did it all?
I remember watching this. We had to go to a family friend's house for a party when it was airing, but their daughter was a big Doctor Who fan, so we got to watch it anyway. So we were just sat in the living room watching it when all the adults were around. So that maybe I was like, shut up, I'm trying to listen to this. But my jaw hit the floor when those Daleks come out of the sphere at the end. I mean, the setup of it is very similar to Parting of the Ways, really, because like, oh, Bad Wolf's not ours, it's this thing, and then the sphere's not ours, it's this thing. So that's kind of reused, which is a shame. But my God, when those Daleks show up, that's cool. And Mickey makes his grand return after a month and a half of being away. And yeah, I think maybe more so than any other series, I think the first parters of the 2-part stories this series do feel very set-up-y.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe it's just Cybermen for one part as like first parts, but yeah, I do think they introduced the Cybermen a bit too early, but if in the next time trailer, I suppose it doesn't really matter. But yeah, I remember enjoying it, getting the torture stuff at long last, and the opening scene with like Rose on the beach. You're like, I'm sorry, what?
Yeah.
The day what? The story she what?
Yeah.
I mean, we know how it goes, but yeah, it's one of my favorite cliffhangers of all time. So I'm just excited to relive that. I get chills every time I watch it. And yeah, I don't remember like a big bulk of it. I think the Doctor and Jackie obviously have a lot of scenes together. I enjoy that dynamic. I'm sure I will continue to enjoy it. But like the whole stuff with Pete Sword and stuff isn't until Doomsday, so we don't get any of that in the first part. But also Cybermen, so I'm excited to check it out again.
And don't forget, we get to meet Martha's cousin.
Yeah, Free Management's first appearance.
Yeah, in Doctor Who before she was cast as.
This is the part that gets her the companion. Yeah.
Yep. So yeah, I'm going to be interested to see if I'm bored during the build-up, knowing what's coming, because similar to, I think, Rise of the Cybermen. It's kind of like come on, let's get there. So I'll be interested to see if that's how I feel.
So it's very strange to me when they approach the Cybermen in this series. They have an episode called Rise of the Cybermen and just determined not to show them. And then you actually have Army of Ghosts and they show the Cybermen like 15 minutes into the episode. I'm like, oh, okay. Well,
okay then.
You do you.
But yeah, it will be very interesting to rewatch, and I'm excited to watch it, especially after the past 2 weeks we've had. These should be more good weeks coming up.
Yes.
Because obviously we've got the finale now. Next 2 weeks we've got the Christmas special, which is Runaway Bride, which is obviously Catherine Tate's first appearance, and then we've got Smith and Jones, which I think is probably one of my favourite series openers, which means that Gina back, and we get a new companion as well. So there's plenty to come in terms of Doctor Who. I mean, we didn't know this all at the time, but looking back, you're like, wow, this is a really interesting 4 episodes to come. Looking forwards. But that's it. So by all means, let us know in the comments what you thought of the episode. Did you hate it as much as the two of us seemingly did again? Is it one of your favourites? Obviously, last week somebody did say they enjoyed Love and Monsters. I couldn't tell if it was sarcastic. If it wasn't, good for you. Everyone's allowed to like whatever they want to like. So this could be your favourite episode. You could love it, but it just didn't hit it right with us, which is fine. But yeah, that's it. And we will see you next week for part 1 of the Series 2 finale. Bye.
Bye.